Welcome to the Sourcing Hero podcast, produced by Una, a group purchasing organization that empowers sourcing heroes, and Art of Procurement, the world's largest procurement podcast network. I'm your host, Kelly Barner. The goal of the Sourcing Hero podcast is to capture the epic stories of people who are rising up and beating the odds to create exceptional value within procurement, directly from those heroes themselves.
Today, my guest here on the Sourcing Hero podcast is Gale Daikoku. In addition to having deep experience in the procurement space, leading the global influencer marketing space, Gale is one of the best networked people I know. She's constantly commenting on other people's content, and she always knows somebody else that is interested in a topic and is always willing to pull them in. So, hi, Gale. I am so glad to have you with me on the Sourcing Hero podcast.
Thank you, Kelly. It's a pleasure to be here.
So other than being one of the most active LinkedIn people I know, what else is it helpful or interesting for people to know about your professional background?
So I'm currently in what I would describe as my rewirement phase. And that's really how I describe this transition in my career. You know, I've got like 3 decades of corporate experience, doing a bunch of things, including some nonprofit. And when I shifted in my career last year, I took a pause, and I'm really rethinking how we come back into the workforce. A lot of fractional work, things like that. But I'm really leaning towards pursuing leadership around nonprofits and places I've been. So that's kind of what I've been up to, which is really taking that pause and having that time to rewire how we work, because, when you're in corporate life, sometimes you forget about those things.
Yeah.
So that's what I am right now. That's me.
And I think that's something that takes a lot of courage, right? Because I think everybody would agree, like, okay, Gale, okay, Kelly, who's responsible for your career? Well, each of us is responsible for our career, but we can't do a good job on our own behalf if we're not completely in sync with who we are, what we're good at, what we want. What is it that we need to understand and accept about ourselves as individuals to do a good job advocating for ourselves as we look between different positions?
I think for me, taking that pause, and it was really hard, to be honest. Like, if you've ever had the luxury, because it is a luxury to be able to do kind of a time out, it's really around getting deep with, or getting truthful with yourself around what are you good at? What are you maybe not as strong at? And we all have strengths and weaknesses, even if we want to ignore weaknesses. And really, what lights you up? I mean, I think it was this idea of what are the things that light me up? I have a friend who says, what's your happy place? And I would always come back to the people part of whatever the role was or the work I was doing, because it's actually those conversations that you have when you're working on an event, when you're working on a project, when you're building relationships. It's really hard to do this on LinkedIn, right?
Yes.
The thing you opened with. And so generally, when it's something that's in my wheelhouse and I'm interested in, and we've met, that's, I think, originally how we probably met.
Yeah.
It's conversations over time. It's not a one-off thing.
Yeah.
So it's really, for me, leaning into those conversations and digging into whatever it is you're working on and where's the common ground. Because over time, the only way work gets done is when you trust the other person on the other side of the screen, the coffee table, the whatever. So this is really about, I would say, to some degree, the art of the conversation to kind of gain you there. And I would say that served me fairly well throughout my career.
Yeah. I actually want to go back to your friend's comment about the happy place. Now, if your happy place happens to be hiring, you are in a great position. But is it really realistic to hold out for a professional situation that brings you true joy? I mean, I might be the wrong person to come at this because I've had luxury, as you've talked about, to really go after, what do I want to do? I want to work for Art of Procurement. I want to work with Philip Eidson and the rest of the team. I've gotten to do that. But is it realistic for most people to try to find joy in their professional situation?
I think I'll use corporate life as the
Sure.
best example. And my last chapter, which is not so far away at SAP, was a little bit over 10 years of true corporate experience, and I have 3 of those chapters in my career of about that same time. And I would say that when you find yourself in an organization, typically they're larger and you have lots of things around you, sometimes you have to look around. And this is not just at what your role and your job is, but look around and figure out what are the things that interest you beyond what you're doing. I'm not saying sign up for a bunch of extracurriculars,
Sure.
because there are some leaders that frown on this. But I had always, as part of that culture, been afforded the opportunity to plug into an employee resource group, as an example. And many companies, mid and large, have them. And generally they are affinity groups.
Yeah.
For example, Business Women's Network or Sustainability Champions or Asian Pacific Islanders, whatever that is, based on your affinity groups that you identify as, and have conversations. And so in a very large organization like SAP, for the past 10 years too, I was doing some pro bono projects and connecting with these things, because as you look around to whatever the job, the role is, part of my success in my various roles there was understanding, knowing the people and knowing the network. And it wasn't just like a one-off thing. I was lucky enough to work on many events, many projects. And over time, you build those internal trusted relationships that came sort of with the entire scope of it. So I would say, when you think about it, it's putting your head up and not just looking at whatever your role, the job is. But for me, I'm always drawn to people. And sometimes it starts with a conversation in an elevator, at the coffee bar. And it's those conversations, especially at times like right now, that are really important in terms of thinking about your personal preferences and where you're going to go next. And for me, a lot of that is having years of experience, and this voice, this person, tells me what I know and how I want to show up to do whatever is right in front of me, what's next. And that's what this rewirement thing is all about, which is going back to the gut instincts and the things that I know to plug in that way. So that's what I'm thinking at this moment.
But also recognizing where you've grown, right? Because we work in different kinds of companies. We might change industry. We might be in different geographical locations. And all of that becomes a part of you as you go through your career. So recognizing, okay, when I first started out, I was going to do this or that. But then through some weird set of circumstances, I got shoved over here. I had the opportunity to go over there. There is a reflective part of recognizing along the way, there were things I had to do that were unexpectedly delightful. There were things that I used to like, and truthfully, I'm kind of burned out on them and tired of doing those things. And so I think some of what you're talking about, and maybe this is part of this phase, is looking at your growth as an individual professional and thinking about deliberately what has changed and how do you want to factor that into what you do next?
Absolutely. I mean, like, if you had asked me about a year ago, what do you do for downtime? My first answer always would be sleep, because we all don't do enough sleeping in our lives. So that aside, right? And making sure you're rest and ready, right? There's a lot to that. And there's a ton of research. That's not what this is about. It was around having that space and that time to reflect and kind of quiet your mind. Many years ago, I started to meditate, and this is my analogy, and it's hard. And like,
meditating is so hard.
I remember what I told my husband and my family. They still crack up to this day that every week I dial into my friend who runs this class to just practice meditation. And again, meditation has many different forms. I can't say that I've been in that deep woo-woo space, but I'm trying for it. But just that idea of breathing and quieting your mind is part of it. And I would say, because I gravitate towards the conversations and people, I actually have more time and space right now to do it. So about a year ago, my husband and I started camping. And to anybody who knows me, that'd be like, you don't seem like the camper. And I would have been right there with him. But it's been just that idea of going out into nature, taking a hike, and kind of shutting down, deliberately shutting down, has been a wonderful experience in terms of quieting the mind, like literally quieting the mind, quieting the chaos. And that's what I might describe might be in my news feed or anybody's news feeds right now, to sort of say, how do we refresh and kind of move through these things we don't control? And for me, that's been a lot of it, which is that ability to know kind of how to do it and having the luxury of the tools around me to do it. Because so now, like, I'm all in on camping. I love it. And it's that idea of it has something to do with nature too, but like, isn't nature amazing? I know that sounds kind of crazy, but
No, it doesn't sound crazy. Although I have to admit, and this is actually the truth, I'll have to take a picture of it at some point and share with everybody. I have a sign in my kitchen that says, "I'm outdoorsy. I drink wine on the patio." So
that's
I'm at like baby
too.
steps towards camping. I'm like, yep, I saw a bug. I'm going back inside.
Yeah. And that typically is me, but I'm getting over that because, again, in the real truth of it is there's so much there that just quiets you and just allows things to happen. So for me, this has been a beautiful part of rewirement, which is rediscovering the things that you forgot about because we're always so busy. So that's how I'm bringing that into the conversation.
And I think it's, meditating is so incredibly hard. Quieting the brain, like, no, do not make a grocery list. Do not think about that book. Do not think about that friend you have to call. Actually quieting the mind requires so much discipline. And I think part of what makes it hard is you don't know what you're going to find once you get to that place of quiet. And I think there's a parallel there around being honest with yourself and reflecting on your career, because I think there's a lot of people that if they could achieve that and really sit and reflect on where they are with their work, they would have to own up to the fact that they don't like what they're doing. And that's scary. But if you don't get there, you can't start taking steps to get training, look for a different position, start connecting with other people, figure out what you do want to do. It really does have to be a conscious effort.
Absolutely. And, when I started in this phase, I was already doing quite a bit of mentoring with students by design and then sort of by accident because of, fun fact, my older daughters don't really ask me to mentor them because I'm their mother, and my opinion might be a little different.
Seems like a conflict of interest, maybe.
Yeah, a little bit of a conflict, but they have friends, who I have conversations with and stuff. And that is sort of a win because it's kind of I have so much to share in terms of, and it's not so much of a tell. And this is the hard part of even mothering, right? It's not so much the tell, it's more of the show. Yes. Because at some level we would call this adulting. But, so when you think about this idea of mentoring and conversations, what I find generally speaking is that Gen Z, where my kids are, and I guess the next one is Gen A, because the lost art of an actual human to human conversation is kind of hard. It's very intimidating, right? For many. So we're almost going back to the basics of, we're in a Starbucks, we're in the grocery store, we're in the whatever, this idea of asking and thanking for, for things like, can you pass the creamer, right? Thank you. These sort of simple civil things that we learned as children, that we teach our children how to be, is totally something that, generally speaking, is kind of lost because it doesn't feel comfortable. This idea of just talking to strangers. I mean, we raised our kids, don't talk to strangers.
Yeah, whatever you do. Yeah.
But and so this whole anxiety, social anxiety around this is something I spend quite a lot of time working through when I'm mentoring students. And it's fascinating to me, but it's also this great opportunity once the light bulb goes off around, oh my gosh, and you give them, you show them ways to kind of work through it. It's weird, but it's like this magic happens in the room. And I've watched it a couple of times when I run this exercise in this speaking thing that I've done. And I love it. But it puzzles me why it works and it's based on this whole human connection thing, because, again, humans are very unpredictable for the most parts.
Yes.
And you have to be curious to have conversations. And so anyways, that was a long way of saying it's the conversation, right?
Yeah. No, I agree. But I do also think my kids are also Gen Z. One of the things they can teach us and can teach the other people that they're in the workplace with, I'll generalize, but I do think they have a better perspective on big picture compensation, right? I mean, you hear a lot of talent trends where they're not focused on like, okay, I want to make every single dollar I can make. For them, it's a little bit more about, okay, I need X dollars in my hands to eat the food that I like, but I would trade getting $5 more for getting to work in flexible locations, or
Right.
I would trade an opportunity for promotion to an additional week of vacation a year or consecutive weeks of vacation. I do think that whether it's them deciding what company they want to work at based on the values of the company, or them deciding what's in their specific employment package, that's something I was definitely raised on. Like, you get what you can get because you're going to work so hard and you deserve it.
Right.
I think they're doing a better job of bringing some of these other non-pay forms of compensation both into the conversation around jobs, but also into their interactions with peers, with managers, with colleagues in other positions. I'd be interested to know if you're sort of noticing the same.
Yeah, I think it's true. Although I would say that top number of, like, if you call it $1 million and everything
Sure.
adds up to that, sometimes distracts from where we are, because I would almost say I totally agree with you. The one detail that sometimes is lost, because, let's be honest, in school, you don't really get taught how to balance a checkbook.
Oh, no.
What compounded interest is and things. And you only really learn that over time, truthfully,
Yep.
right?
Usually by doing it wrong the first time.
Right.
Speaking for me. Yeah.
Even in terms of like saving for retirement, right?
That's right.
And things like that. It's like, it's those small little things that you do early on that add up to bigger things. But, that takes years of life and experience to understand the impact. So back to what we were talking about, which is like, the bigger picture. I think, yes, I absolutely agree. They see it, but sometimes the trade-offs and the path get lost because they don't really actually know who they are. So back to this idea of where I think we can help some of our peers, not all of them. Some of them totally know where they want to go, right? But even like getting deeper inside yourself and understanding like, what are your strengths and how do they delight you back to happy place? Like,
Yes.
I know where my happy places will typically be. And once in a while I surprise myself, but they tend to be in the spaces when you're doing something you're good at. It's just part of who you are.
Yeah.
And when it's harder, it could still be a happy place because it's balanced out with the things you love to do and the things maybe you don't like to do, but it's part of work. And so I think this whole idea around this generation that's coming up, they benefit when they're in a situation where they are collaborating with colleagues in different ranges. But unfortunately, what we see happening is we're in many places, even, places I've been, we start to eliminate some of that generational talent, expertise.
Yes.
Because of circumstances, and it becomes becomes a balance sheet exercise, which is unfortunate. So I'm always striving for, there's other ways to connect and deliver. And this goes back to, even a thing we didn't actually talk about, but networking, the idea of networking and refining it. And why is that important over your career and connecting to other people, right? Networking is critical. It's how I've built my personal board of advisors from people I've known for many years. And people look at me like, are you crazy? It's like, no, when you're in points in your life, especially when you're in transition, you need those people you trust because you've worked with them to be the little bug in your ear saying, are you sure? Or yes,
Right.
and stuff like that, because you can get in your own head having those conversations, but having a set of trusted advisors helping you, guide you in this phase has been invaluable to me as I figure out that what's next and the conversations I need to have.
Absolutely. Now, Gale, we have a tradition here at the Sourcing Hero podcast, and I want to bring you in on this. This is your like official initiation to the club. I'm going to give you 2 questions. You can pick either one. There are no wrong answers. So your choices are either what does the idea of a sourcing hero mean to you, or what do you think heroism looks like in a business context?
Whew, those are tough questions. You know, I sort of think I might hedge and kind of answer both. So to me, you know, a sourcing hero is somebody in the organization who actually understands that your role is not just about procuring or sourcing, whatever the words are the organization uses, things to add value and sell to customers. It's not just about the cost savings and the negotiation and whatever. It's more your impact as a sourcing hero is around the bigger picture of like how this plays out to the longer term operational dynamics of a company. And it's not like just this moment. It's 6 months from now. It's a future. It's the next 5 to 10 years, like how you apply it. You know, and what was the second question again?
What does heroism look like in a business context?
Yeah, that's right. The heroism part. That's what it was. So the heroism part of that is, you know, back to the sourcing profession and the heroes that are in our means who actually understand the dynamics of fluctuation. It's not just about bragging about some contract or savings. These are the quiet people in the room who can actually show you the data on how what your impact is in an organization. So I actually think that this role, these people, these teams are very strategic and important to the org today. And these are the same people whose backgrounds are from accounting and finance and other domains that sometimes seem like a shiny object in an org, but are really about the mechanics of how you run a business. You know, it's cash flow, it's leverage, it's everything else. So I actually think, you know, again, a little biased here from where we've both lived. That it's actually kind of both. And I do think at these really crazy times, we thought COVID was crazy 5 years ago. I think everything around us suggests that you need sort of the sanity of this expertise in your midst, and they come from different places together to collaborate and build this business in such a way that it's going to survive the disruption and the chaos we witness. Whether you're a small supplier or you're a big entity, it's the conversations around how you're going to do that collectively, and it's not one thing. So I see that as sort of both, and why it's critical today to survive.
Absolutely. Gale, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Obviously, you and I have always enjoyed talking, but it's nice to talk to you on the record as well. If people are meeting you through this conversation, would like to connect with you, become part of your vibrant online professional network, what is the best way for them to get in touch?
You know, reach out to me on LinkedIn and send me a message. Tell me what your interest is, and let's do a virtual coffee. It's the best way to start building our network. And you know, there's that saying, your network is your your network is your net worth.
That's right.
And I really believe in that, because it's people like yourself, Kelly, and others that we have in common that really help us have these tough discussions in this space, but as humans, right? Human to human. So I love to practice that. So that's how I would do it.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Sourcing Hero podcast. Join us again next time for more true stories of sourcing and business heroism performed by your colleagues and peers. Look for the Sourcing Hero wherever you get your podcasts, and don't forget to subscribe. Finally, don't forget, sourcing heroism is taking place all around us every day. Keep your eyes open and you're bound to see it. Until next time, I'm your host, Kelly Barner. Stay well, and always remember that you can be a hero too.